Hi, everybody. Welcome back to My Spiritual Journey. I'm your host, Dave Thomas Rocker. And in case you guys haven't, I have a book available on Amazon. It's called My Spiritual Journey, and it's available for $30 paperback and 15 on Kindle. And if you haven't purchased it yet, I recommend you do so. I think you'll enjoy it. I talk about a lot of the stuff I talk about in these videos. So anyway, that's my plug. And today I'm going to talk about dualism mainly. But anyway, I'm going to contrast it with monism. So monism is kind of the philosophy that there's one thing in the universe that kind of dominates everything else. And there's three forms of monism, as you can see on the right side. There's physicalism, also known as materialism. This is the idea that matter dominates the universe. Matter is greater than mind, they say. But there's a couple other forms of monism. There's idealism. That's kind of the opposite of physicalism, the idea that mind is greater than matter. And there have been a couple famous people who, I guess, a famous person who believed in physicalism was this guy, ancient Greek named Aristotle. He was a materialist, and there have been a number of other important materialists throughout history. Another famous one is Ayn Rand. She was actually, I think, even stronger than a materialist. She was an objectivist, and anyway, in terms of idealism, another form of monism, I think the most famous philosopher I can think of is this guy here. His name was Bishop George Berkeley. He was an 18th century Irish philosopher. I was never persuaded by his arguments. He wrote a book I read at college, which I really didn't like. He gives very simple-minded arguments why he thinks that idealism, that the only thing in the world that actually exists are spirits, our minds, and their ideas, and that matter is just an illusion. And I was never persuaded by his arguments. I could talk about that another time. But anyway, let me just go back to this slide. So there's also another form of monism on the bottom right, known as neutral monism. And that's the idea that I guess there's a third substance, and I don't know what that is exactly. Maybe the ether or the quintessence or whatever. But the idea is there's some third substance in the universe that dominates both mind and matter. So I'm not. I guess I used to be when I was a kid. When I was growing up, I was a very hardcore physicalist, actually, or materialist, and I think a lot of scientists are. I mean, you kind of have to believe in matter if you're going to be a scientist, because that's kind of the basis of science, that there's a material universe. So I'm definitely not an idealist, and I don't think I'm a neutral monist either. But let's talk a little about dualism, because I think I am a dualist. There have been a number of other famous philosophers who were dualists. Going back to ancient times, there was this guy, Plato. He was a very famous ancient Greek philosopher, and he thought that there was this ideal world of ideal forms. It's an interesting idea. He thought that our material world was kind of an imperfect replica of this ideal world. So, in his view, the ideal world consisted of ideal objects. Like he thought there was an ideal table, an ideal chair. I guess I don't know if there's ideal people, but ideal everything you could think of. And in some ways, I kind of am an idealist in the same sense as Plato, because at least in terms of math. I mean, mathematics, just pure math. If you think about concepts of math like numbers and circles and spheres, maybe it's easier to think about geometry. Like, think about spheres. Okay, in the real world, there's no perfect sphere. I mean, I guess the Earth is pretty close. Planets are pretty close to perfect spheres, but they're not exact. I mean, on Earth we have mountains, we have valleys, and the Earth isn't even approximately a sphere. It's closer to an oblate spheroid. It's a little bit wider at the equator than through the poles, and so there's no perfect circle we know of. No universe, but in math you can describe perfect circles through mathematical equations. It's just a perfect circle is I guess, a two-dimensional figure. You take a point and you take all the points of fixed distance from that point. And that's a very good mathematical definition of a perfect circle. In the same way, you can have a perfect sphere. That's just a three-dimensional analog of a perfect circle. So you have these kind of perfect things in math. Yeah, and that's why I guess I'm a mathematical Platonist. I think those things exist. I mean, this can be a whole nother video, whether or not math is invented or discovered. I guess Plato was in the camp. He thought that math was discovered. All the ideas of math were really existed, and all mathematicians do discover. I have a lot of reasons for being a mathematical Platonist. The other camp is due to Aristotle, this guy here. He thought math was invented. Like I said earlier, he was a materialist, and he thought that mathematical concepts weren't real, that they're just abstractions, they're creations from the human mind, and matter dominates minds. So I don't do that. Uh, but anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. Let me go back to dualism because that's the one that I believe in. And like I said, Plato was the first really famous dualist. Another really famous dualist was this guy here, Rene Descartes. He was a French philosopher from the 17th century. I really like Descartes. He's one of my favorite philosophers. I studied him in college too, and not only was he a great philosopher, but he also, he was one of the pioneers of modern science, and I really like him. But he thought that there were two substances in the universe. That's what dualism is. There's both mind and matter, and that I guess they're sort of separate. And he thought we were mind, that humans. He even had a proof. I think this Lazarus proof, but he came up with a proof that he was not made of man, that he was actually made of spirit. And kind of a simple-minded proof, but I do really like him, and I kind of agree with him. But I'm not a complete dualist. I mean, there's also this idea that there's sort of three substances in the universe: body, spirit. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between mind and spirit, but I think I'm a little bit in this camp, and this is a very popular idea today. I think this comes from Asia. I know that people practice yoga are really into this, and they say you have to have a healthy body, mind, and spirit, and I guess we're a little bit of all three of these things. And I guess that's kind of where I am now. And I think they can interact too. Notice that this is a Venn diagram, and these three sets actually intersect each other. And so there is overlap. And I think they even say what the overlap is. They say that overlap between body and spirit is this thing they call chi or energy. The intersection of body and mind is what they call emotions, and the intersect of mind and spirit is I guess they say subconscious. And then they all three intersect into the thing in the middle, which is called awareness, or maybe you could think of that as enlightenment. Um, and I kind of like this. I mean, I think they do intersect each other, and I could talk about this in another video, I guess. I mean, I kind of like this picture the best because I think there are these three realms, and they do seem to interact with each other in kind of subtle ways. And anyway, I think that's the philosophy I like the best of the ones I talked about today. So anyway, that's my video for today, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.